All right. That should be that. Hey guys, hey. It's me, it's Tech. It's Tech Turning to It. How you guys doing? I'm starting to get a little leery about doing the sound mode stuff because as I have started uploading these as VODs specifically, now I am subject to YouTube's stupid what is it? It's like an AI automatic fucking song tracker bullshit that it does whenever it tries to get people on fucking copyright infractions, which it never does. It's not properly anyway. So I've already gotten 2 alerts, not strikes, about some of the stuff that I haven't put up yet at the time of recording. And it's one of them is just like, it's the main theme of Witch of the Holy Night, and you can't do that. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I can. I'm using the game itself. But the other one was something that looked and sounded like it could be like a real like orchestra recording of a thing. I don't know. It was. I would need to look into it further. Hold on. But it's got me now like a little leery about lingering too long on that screen, or at the very least, like, you know, using it in any capacity, which is a damn shame because I actually really like the just kind of sitting on the sound thing because it's fun and the songs are good. Everybody should listen to them. But all that aside, we got another one in the pipeline, so let's get started. Witch of the Holy Night 2. Man, Witch of the Holy Night 2 already? Now I think I read somewhere that Nasu actually said that like 2 and 3 may not even be visual novels, which I don't know what that means because he's a strange man and I have no idea what he's planning. He made Mihoyo fucking 5. I said this as it came out, but he made fucking Mihoyo 5 the fucking Grand Order tie-in event. Oh, I would be very interested to see what those are though. Anyway, that's right. Background. The golden wolf's ears stood pointed, twitching in response to the sounds around it. Its meal finished, it curled up into a ball in anticipation of nap time and yawned, half from boredom. The old abandoned classroom had fulfilled its purpose many moons ago. For a month, the wolf had spent his time resting on top of a heap of disheveled desks. His name was Beowulf. He was a purebred werewolf, named after the sun at his birthplace, and a hero of legend upon leaving there. It goes without saying he was not from this country. He came from a land deep within the European wilderness, surrounded by mountains and forests. With obvious allusions to Soujyuro, his homeland was a realm no human had ever set foot in. In their isolated world forgotten by time, a diminishing race of werewolves lived in peace. This is where Beo first appeared. In a cave in the outskirts of their village, the werewolves found a child bearing the same golden coat as their ancestors. The child was sleeping soundly, as if in his natural habitat. The village welcomed their new member with open arms. 2,000 years of advancing civilization had been cruel to them. As the forests were destroyed, valleys unearthed, and the waters polluted, the werewolf birth rate dwindled. They were now facing one birth a decade. Jesus. The child's golden coat, deviating from the typical gray or white, and shared only by their ancestors who were treated as gods, felt like a sign their prayers had been answered. A bloodline in atrophy. The werewolves were forced to embrace change. This radiant child, at least temporarily, made them forget about their troubles. Alas and alack. As time passed, their hopes turned to disappointment. The golden wolf was not their salvation. For some reason, Lu, that Rhea Golden Sun, remained a child. Decades passed, and still he did not grow. Forever young, immortal, cursed. He searched the village for his birth mother, but to no avail. He searched the village for someone who understood his plight, to no avail. Over hundreds of years, he came to realize something. He was different. Very different. Neither male nor female, although using male pronouns. Neither strong nor weak. Ignorant of life and death, joy and fear. That thing's a spirit born of nature. Might look like us werewolves, but don't let that fool you. The child himself needed not conjecture to know his one true nature. He was perfect, and therefore he was alone. With Golden Wolf, the world was all too small. That was why. Indeed, that was the very reason. He wanted to know what life was. He wanted to know loss. If he was all-powerful, he wanted to know the mystery behind his all-powerfulness. Because, as it was, his existence was meaningless. The Golden Wolf was at a loss, as were the werewolves around him. They revered him, but at the same time they wanted nothing to do with him. Lu moved back to the cave he was discovered in, and resigned himself to a life of seclusion.
太陽のルー？ルーガルじゃなくて？
Lu? Like the sun god Lu? I thought it was short for Lugaru. Garo. Whatever.
そりゃ面白い。偶然にしちゃできすぎだ。
It's one heck of coincidence. And then one day... Oh, I think it's... Okay. It was, what's her name? Touko. Like the sun god Lu. Thought it was sure for Lugaru. It's one heck of a coincidence. Yeah. Touko came to visit.
またガタガタとうるさい。トウコさんはあれだよね。派手好きなくせに豆だよね。
You're too loud, Miss Touko. Why do you have to be so dramatic all the time? From his place atop the pile of rubble, Beo peered into the hallway. He thought his fussy master was busy dealing with Misaki City's ley lines, but she was engrossed in making traps. 1 month passed since they made the dilapidated building their makeshift workshop. Creating a new trap for intruders became a daily pursuit of Touko's.
安全を用意しておくなんて他の生き物は大変だ。
worry about your safety. What about the other creatures? Having been like this since birth, knowing neither infancy nor dotage, he thought differently than others. For he was perfect from the day he was born, never declining, never improving. As much as he had no comprehension of weakness, childlike, fickle, and without morals, he had no concept of good and bad as either a human or a wolf. A beautiful creature, disconnected from the world around him, he was on top of all other creatures. With one exception, his master, Touko Aozaki. She showed him a sparkling, delicious world. Oops, shit. And above all, he found her scent refreshing. To him, the world was divided into what was cool and what was not. Your preference in leisure pursuits were of no consequence to him, and he never took gender into account. The only thing that mattered to him was whether a person's life was logical and therefore cool. Touko Aozaki had her faults, but she smelled good.
Beo, 昼食は済ませたか?
Finished your lunch, Beo? Beo's master entered the classroom, presumably done with the traps for the day.
夜が本番だ。それまであまり羽目を外すなよ。
Showtime tonight. Let's keep it together until then. Sometimes, like now, she would nag him. But on the whole, his master pleased him. In reality, the contract binding her to him was not particularly powerful. If he wanted to, he could tear her to pieces at any time. No human could restrain him. However, he had no intention of killing Touko in exchange for his freedom. And there was a reason for this. In order to move about freely in human society, he needed someone like her. As long as she did not offend him, he had no reason to rock the boat. However,
やっと本番か。待たせすぎだよ、東子さん。
finally the main event. I was getting tired of waiting, Miss Touko. The promise she made him in his cave and the reality of their situation had become to come apart at the seams.
来い。最高の神秘と戦わせてやる。
Come here. I'll let you fight the most powerful mystic there is. He was compliant up till now, but his patience was wearing thin. The fight with the newest magician last night was an enormous letdown.
そう言うな。私も昨日は拍子抜けだったんだから。
Oh, gosh. I was just as disappointed as you were.
いいけどね。実はあの子、使わないんじゃなくて、使えないだけじゃないの?
I'm not that bummed, but why would the girl use it? Is it because she can? His master's expression turned serious. Not in agreement with the wolf's question, though. For she had already asked herself the same, and many similar other questions.
いや、使うぐらいなら死んだ方がマシなのかもな。
No, because she'd be better off dying than use it, I suppose.
そんなバカなことがあるの? 使わないと死んじゃう状態だったんだよ。
It doesn't make any sense. She almost died because she didn't use it.
だから、そんなバカな考えが成立するぐらい。
Which proves my point. It must be too terrifying to use, Touko finished in her head. He stopped short of voicing it and chuckled at her emotional outburst.
どれほどのものか想像がつかないのは確かだ。
Sure, I can't even imagine what it'll be. Must be.
だがまあ、根本は変わらないさ。 Touko さん、 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 Touko さ
魔法がどのような奇跡神秘の類であれ、魔術師である以上、青子に勝ち目はない。
Still, this changes nothing. Whatever sort of miraculous mystic her magic is, as long as she remains a mage, she can't win. With those words, Beo's master walked out of the room, emphasizing that his role in all this was to face Aoko only at that very moment.
魔法ね。
True magic, huh? The bored look in his eyes shifted. He recalled the taste of that girl, his long tongue sliding over his chainsaw-like fangs. It's not where I thought that sentence is going. Make no mistake, he would finish his meal. He was the oldest werewolf, the golden god of the forest. For as long as he could remember, no. From the moment he appeared, he had been the most powerful creature of all. All man-made mystics were trash for him. Magecraft was laughable, and even mystics, artificial miracles, were futile. The very existence was an insult to him.
もちろんそういう契約だし、ちゃんと平らげはするけれど。
After all, that was the deal. When the time comes, I dig in, right? I dig right in, whatever. That was the extent of their pact. Once he had dealt with this so-called true magic, he was free. His eyes burned with the wolf inside of him. His fanged maw twisting into a sadistic, beastly grin. Well, which on the holy night? It was just past 7 p.m. Misaki High School's old building stood silently. While light from the city reached the area, the forest and mountains kept the area hushed. Nothing unusual. During winter vacation, the old building, now still covered in yesterday's snow, was rarely used. Without signs of life, such unused structures were mere monuments of what once was, nothing more. The old school building would remain that way until the start of the new semester. Behind it, the vast forest grew darker by the minute. If the building had died in just under 2 weeks of vacation, what had become of the forest over the years? The wall of overgrown trees filtered out the noise of the city and most of the moonlight. An otherworldly realm had taken root, not even 2 miles away from town. Piercing the cold night air, footsteps crunched through the powdery snow.
この辺りに仕掛けはなさそうね。
No traps this way.
それでどうするの？このまま旧校舎に忍び込む？
So what's the plan? Sneak into the old school building?
まさか私らがやってきたことなんてとっくにバレてるわ。
Yeah, right. She already knows we're here.
隠れても意味はないし、何より敵のアジトに入ってどうするのよ。盗みが目的じゃないでしょ、今回は。
Why hide? And what would we do once we were in our hideout? We're not here to steal anything.
後ろから切りつけるのは強盗というのじゃなくて？
What about the element of surprise?
それができれば苦労はないんだけどね。まあ、忍者の真似事は私というか、アリスの芸風じゃないでしょ。
If we could do that, it'd make our job easier. Playing ninja isn't really my thing. Or yours, for that matter.
そもそも
And anyway...
そもそも
Anyway...
やる気満々なのは
No.
こっちもあっちも同じってこと。
We're not the only ones out for blood tonight. The sound of their footsteps stopped in unison. The old, forgotten Misaki High School building stood before them. What used to be the schoolyard was now a barren snowscape. Reclaimed by the forest, the building looked like a shell of its former self. The surrounding trees resembled standing mourners at a funeral.
せっかちなお嬢さん方だ。タイムリミットまであと4時間はあるというのに。
Talk about time. Talk about impatient. There's still 4 hours until the time limit. No, I think I should do that differently. Still trying to find the different voices. Alone in the middle of the white altar was the lone, scarred red mage. As she came out of the forest, Aoko lowered herself slightly, scowling at her distant target. Next to her, Alice stood motionless. Bare branches of the trees cast long, thorny shadows. Aoko was reminded of Sleeping Beauty, except this mage wasn't nearly as pleasant as the princess in that. Not to mention she wasn't sleeping, and there was no prince. So really not like Sleeping Beauty at all. Regardless, this princess came out of her schoolhouse castle to greet her challengers.
その体で無理をして。
Pushing yourself in that condition?
あなたのそういうところ、姉としてどうかと思うわ、青子。
You do make your big sister worry, Aoko. Touko grinned faintly. Aoko fought back the urge to respond. Meanwhile, Alice stood in silence, uninterested in sibling rivalry. Touko stood about 100 feet away. With their senses sharpened through magecraft and the silence of this forest, they could hear each other perfectly. The golden wolf was nowhere to be seen. Touko faced the two girls alone. Alice's black overcoat and winter hat were typical items of clothing for a mage battle. A few paces in front of her was Aoko, whose combat guard was comparatively out of place, a Misaki High School uniform. She had asked Alice to bring a change of clothes for her, but there must have been some misunderstanding. Though it was a trivial miscommunication, Touko seemed to think it had some special meaning.
ところで、始める前に一ついいかな。
Before we start, mind if I ask something?
気になって仕方がないし、この先機会もないだろうから聞くんだけど。あなたの戦闘服ってそれなの？青子。
I can't help but be curious, and this is probably my last chance to ask. But is that seriously what you're gonna fight in, Aoko? Touko spoke familiarly despite the distance. Was able to communicate her deep-seated scorn without trouble. Aoko would rather attack than engage in small talk, but she decided to take the bait.
そんなわけないでしょ。今までこういう機会が多かっただけよ。数えるなら今日を含めて4回しかないわ。
Don't lie, you have plenty of chances to ask me. 4 times, including today.
私はまだ現役だからそれも悪くはないかもしれないけど、いつか流行るでしょ、こういうのも。
Well, this is my job right now, so I think it's fitting. Besides, my fashion's ahead of the times. Aoko was sure to emphasize her words. For a split second, Touko's eyes narrowed.
呆れたな。相変わらずのローセンスだ。
Figures. Same bad taste as always.
それはどうも。人形を実の妹に見立てる異常者にそう言われるなら、一周回って安心よ。
Thanks. It's actually a relief hearing that from a creepy puppet maker. With that, the two fell silent and glared at each other. Their bloodlust cut through the thick, cold air like a knife. While the two of them sized each other up, Alice surveyed the area around Touko. There was no indication anyone or anything was lying in wait near her. Perhaps she could see the werewolf. She should see if the werewolf was still in the old school building. Maybe Touko didn't feel like Aoko and Alice were much of a threat in their injured states. Or was she really not expecting a counterattack so early, so the werewolf wasn't ready? After some contemplation, Alice surmised it was the former. She was really going to fight alone. Her arsenal comprised her mystic eyes and rune magecraft. That was more than enough to deal with Aoko and Alice in their current states. Alice, all I need is one shot. Aoko signaled to Alice behind her with the movement of her finger. Alice had no objections. The original plan was for her to keep the werewolf busy. With the mirror as a backup, Aoko was hoping to catch Touko off guard. They had a few other cards up their sleeves. The fact remained that as mages, their attacks couldn't affect the werewolf. So they decided to ignore it and focus on taking out Touko. Not the best strategy, but it was all the two of them could come up with. They had thrown a curveball. Had been thrown a curveball. Touko had the upper hand, so she was reluctant to use the beast. Aoko wasn't about to let this opportunity go to waste. By distracting her with her sibling banter, she would settle things before the werewolf even showed up. It's my turn to ask a question. How are the fields working out? Please, it's barely been a day. I haven't touched them yet. Can't rush these things. Besides, I want what's inside the ley lines, not the bounded fields. I have no plans to reset them. Tearing into you is probably way faster than tearing into the land anyway. I knew it. All the more reason I can't let you become a magician. Aoko's blue eyes burned brightly with a fiery fighting spirit. Even though her sister was ready to pounce, Touko remained motionless, but for her mouth, which twisted into a smirk. A magician, huh? Gotta admit, I like the sound of it. The magic crusts that weren't implanted in me, and the true magic of the Aozaki family. But it's fine. I do want them, but I can get them on my own. Oh wait. Did you come here to show me your magic, Aoko? Touko's words came out flatly, but her eyes mocked her sister. It was true, however, that if Aoko wanted to defeat Touko, her best chance would be to use this mysterious true magic. The only problem was that she couldn't. If she could, she would have used it to avoid being mauled last night. Aoko Aozaki couldn't use true magic. Touko believed she needed to fulfill some kind of condition. The protection their grandfather placed in the formula was to prohibit miracles from being easily realized. However, that wasn't because he was concerned about the human world. It was no exaggeration to say he'd feel nothing if magic leveled the entire city. The truth was, true magic never had any conditions. Aoko was being held back by trauma. These 5 privileges, the only powers of their kind, were bound by cognitive seals. That's why Touko looked down on her naive little sister. So weak. A body incapable of handling magecraft could be cut down with a mere sword. Aoko knew that better than anyone else, which is why she couldn't forgive her sister's ridicule. Just try using true magic, huh? Pathetic taunt. If that's how she wanted to play, then so be it. Have it your way! With a burst of pure rage, Aoko made her move. Her colorless shoes sped across the untainted snowfield. Like a stone skipping across the water. As Aoko charged forward, she disappeared. Only her footprints advanced, like bullet holes in the snow. Touko held her ground. Concealment was elementary magecraft. More than likely, the power came from one of Alice's trinkets. It was a simple yet effective countermeasure to Mystic Eyes. Touko's Mystic Eyes used the locked property to bind an opponent. It did not have the Logos property to discern truth through an illusion. Once Magecraft's workings were revealed, its weakness was exposed. Still the same sloppy footwork. In a mere 4 seconds, her opponent had crossed 10 yards and was still speeding up. It appeared that she had given up on the mage battle and was going to move in for melee. The other girl, Alice Kawanji, didn't take a single step. Suicide charge. Opened a friendly fire from the rear. Even with Alice's protection, this is dumb. You'll regret this, Aoko. Your trump card has to come from your own deck. Sneering, Touko raised her left arm, holding it out in front of her threateningly. 10 more yards. Unfortunately, her footprints gave away her position. So. Touko began engraving a rune in the air. But before she could finish, Aoko's footprints stopped. She was still too far away for close combat, but a strange place to end her attack. No, wait. Could she really stop so suddenly at that speed? She jumped. Touko made a snap decision. She quickly raised her outstretched arm towards the sky as if saluting the moon. Suelo! Ooh, shit. Flames tore through the air. The rune carved into the body above her, bathing it in a pillar of flames. No internal resistance spell could help. Rather than simply burning their target, the runes wrapped them in a wreath of flame. Fuck. You can do it, computer. There we go. The assailant screamed, falling into the snow-covered ground. In agony, she extended a burning hand out of the hellish fire, as if begging for mercy. It was truly the stuff of nightmares. The snow melted as the fire burned the attacker alive. Chirp, chirp. The movement was far too theatrical to be Aoko. Touko had already turned her gaze to Alice. She hadn't been watching the burning corpse at all. Touko knew it wasn't Aoko from the moment the body fell to the ground. They're dumb, Meinster familiar. Irritated, Touko glared at Alice. While Aoko had vanished into thin air, she hadn't moved at all. Blue energy traced a circle around where she stood. It was force to fourth. 4-bar Grand Magecraft, mobilizing her magic crest. Touko only had a single action runes. No, he hadn't mastered anything above 2 bars to begin with. This torrent of energy was too much to handle. The rune formed the magic circle. Awaz was the rune of withdrawal. Awaz, the rune of withdrawal, was evoked and Aoko's concealment was undone, allowing Touko to utilize her mystic eyes. Within her opened pupil, the infinitely mirrored eyes captured their target in endless hell. Two of them. The mage's sight was literally split in two. The space in front of Aoko distorted, obscuring her form like an icy mist. If Touko's eye was like opposing mirrors, then this was like sticking a one-way mirror in the triangulation point. With her vision split in two, she couldn't lock onto Aoko. The mirror of slumber, Touko. Aoko's deep in the fork in the road the mirror creates. From where you are, you'll never be able to see her. Alice explained without concern. Due to the herb Touko made Alice swallow, she was still unable to use her own magecraft. However, she could use ploys already in motion without using magical energy, such as the mansion's mirror and the aimless little bluebird. Finally, the magic bullet was loaded. Set. Flute. Direct current. Sonic the Hedgehog spin dash. Raising her right arm to reveal her luminescent crests, Aoko took aim at her target 100 feet ahead. Magical energy coursed through her gun barrel arm. From the moment she received Alice's invisibility, Aoko had begun chanting her magecraft. It took Touko a few seconds to notice. Aoko produced more spins in the awakened magic circuits than she had ever done before. She readied not sharp nor draw. Instead, she advanced past her third process, the compression of magical energy, magical blow. If she fired the blue ether that gathered before her, it would fly with the force of 10 tons. Using her magic crests to multiply the energy and machine gun her target, it was enough power to demolish even the old building behind her. Touko! Aoko stared intensely at her sister, ready to fire. Touko had no time to counterattack, or even speed to evade. The fact she couldn't move implied she knew them that better than anyone. Acceptance filled her eyes, not fear. Aoko didn't hesitate. She squeezed the trigger on her right hand. Core Plan Star Mine. Magic bullet configuration. Convergent launch. Circuit. Fire! Last word came out like a scream, which I wish I could do, but yeah. Under the impact of the ether, the surrounding snow melted and flew around. So that's obviously not going to work, because they're definitely not going to say that Aoko demolished the old school building. Touko was engulfed in dirt. No way she could survive Aoko's magic bullet. It contained every bit of Aoko's magical energy she could muster. Viewing the chaos, Aoko confirmed her victory. And yet, somehow she felt bitter. Then, choosing to deal with the torrent of magical energy she swallowed up later, Touko tutted at Aoko's childishness. Her disappointment was so deep it bordered on despair.
学ぶにしては遅すぎたが、まあ聞いておけ、青子。
It's a little too late now, but listen up, Aoko.
切り札というものは先に出した方の負けなんだよ。
Never play your trump card first. You will lose. Her voice cold and aloof, she was completely unscathed. The mage stood in the snowfield, not a single speck of dirt on her overcoat. Just before the bullet reached Touko, she deflected it with magical energy of the same level. Aoko could only stare at the scene before her. The negation of her magecraft hadn't shocked her, though. Leaf-like objects floated behind her sister. Aoko stared like she was living in a nightmare. Countless magic crest poured from Touko's back. It all happened in an instant. The magic bullet approaching like a tsunami, Touko lightly snapped her fingers, causing a stream of letters to rush out from behind her. Text became art. Golden flowers bloomed. There must have been hundreds. All sorts of magecraft from even beyond Western Europe. Kind normally carved into the flesh of a mage. The kind Touko Aozaki shouldn't possess. The kind only followers of those schools should know. Blossoming magic crests, brighter than the moon. Inscribed in the air, they formed a totem pole, a guardian beast, protect Touko. And now you see. I don't need to rely just on Beo. Touko's expression was steely. Victory was in her grasp, and there was no room to rest on her laurels. So it was the mirror that concealed you? You used it to detect, capture, and act as backup. Impressive. Not quite one of the great three, but a very versatile and, might I add, exceptional ploy. You're patronizing us. You're just upset you got duped. Not at all. I'm just giving credit where it's due.
何しろ今のバージョンは私とマインスターの合作だ。趣味に興じすぎてあれこれと機能を足してしまったと今更ながら悔いているところさ。
I was the one who worked with Mindstar on the thing in the first place. I'm just kind of annoyed that someone got carried away and couldn't help but add functions to it.
その後、青子に見せかけて私に向かってきたのは例のコマドリ。それに気を取られている間の大規模な魔術の発動。
And then the little Robin, coming at me disguised as you. You used it to distract me with it while you charged up your huge attack.
私の魔眼はアリスが防ぎ、青子は攻撃だけに専念する。組み立ては悪くはない。 よくやったと言っておくよ。
Alice avoided my mystic eyes while you were focused on offense. Not a bad plan. You know, all in all, you did pretty well. Touko recounted their strategy, sharing their impressions as she went. Aoko could not take her eyes off Touko's blooming magic crest. Only Alice was paying close attention to Touko's words.
しかし、それもここまでだ。
Well, I'm afraid this is the end of the line.
惜しいな、青子。わずか2年であれだけの魔術を使えるのなら、あと数年もすれば一流の射手になっていただろうに。
It's such a shame, Aoko. I can't believe you're still using such a magecraft after 2 years. You could have become a world-class marksman. Touko snapped her fingers again. The floating crests began to glow more brightly.
アリス、あれは何？
Alice, what are those? Aoko whispered to Alice standing next to her as she held her hand. She couldn't risk turning around. The second she took her eyes off Touko, the fight would be over.
見ての通り、魔術刻印。信じられないけど。
As you can see, they're magic crests, as hard as it is to believe. Alice's voice was filled with shock and discomfort. Aoko shared Alice's sentiment. Magic crests were passed down through family lines and took unique forms. At heart, they were merely personalized inscriptions and technically no different from grimoires. However, the reality was far different. Magecraft had no set form. Without a set shape, the ability to recreate mystics was itself flawed. Craft it into a form required an immeasurable investment of time and devotion. Magic crests were the crystallization of a family's desires and ambitions, and proof of a successor's lineage. Crests had no effect on their own. They were the ultimate symbol of a family. If no mage was willing to imbue themselves with the crest, or lacked the resolve to merge with it, then the crest's meaning was lost. That was the key difference between a crest and a mere spellbook. Crests could not be shared, and imitating them was pointless. It only stood to reason, then, that even if the crests manifesting behind Touko belonged to someone else, only the original owner could benefit from them.
確かに私の魔弾はあの刻印からの魔術で弾かれた。
Those crests have to be what's deflecting my... Those crests have to be what's deflecting my magic bullets. Don't tell me she's... Searching for answers, Aoko squinted her eyes and glared at Touko. She knew that copying a crest had no purpose. Only the original inheritor could invoke one. There was only one possible conclusion.
そう。肌に刻まず中空に浮かべてるのはそういうこと。
I see. If they aren't inscribed in your skin and just floating in the air... Aoko spat a curse at her sister. Touko nodded, pleased at our enemy's quick wit.
ああ、この体には合わないのでな。私の背後の空間に固定している。
The crests didn't suit my body, so I fixed them to the space behind me.
本当はね、お前たちのように肉に刻んだ方がいいんだ。魔術の起動が一動作で済むんだから。
Of course, crests like yours that are engraved into the flesh are much better because they became activated.
だが実際に使用するのなら、こうするしかない。
For me, though, this was the only way.
起動までの手順は一つ増えるが、マイナスばかりでもない。所詮は人事なんでね。痛みは全く感じない。
And while I do need to perform an extra step to activate them, they're not mine, so I don't really feel any pain. It seemed neither physically nor mentally. Aoko knew her sister was inhuman, but she never thought she would go this far.
合うわけないじゃない。他人の魔術刻印を剥がしてるんだから、血筋の称号からして馴染むはずがないわ。
Well, you're right about them not suiting you. You stole them from someone else, so your bloodline can never match up.
で
Which means
奪われた連中は死ぬこともできず、今もどこかに生かされているわけだ。刻印の持ち主が死んだら起動すらできないものね、それ。
the person or people you stole them from can't die, so you must have them locked up somewhere. If they died, you couldn't activate their crests.
トウコさん、あなた。
Touko, you.
非難される覚えはないんだが。
I don't remember anyone complaining.
私はかかる火の粉を払っただけだよ。向こうから戦いを挑んできたんだから、戦利品ぐらいは用意してもらわないと。
They were asking for it. They should have been better prepared if they wanted to face me.
まあ、中にはつまらない単語を口にしたバカ者もいるが、それはそれだ。
There were some rather rude fools who used questionable language.
むしろ優しいと思うけどね。私を殺しに来た連中をわざわざ生かしてあげてるんだから。
But I think I've been quite kind, really. They came to kill me, and I let them live.
その魔術師たちがちゃんと人間の形をしてることを祈るわ、肉親として。
Really? As a fellow mage, I hope they're okay.
お前ね、私を何だと思ってるんだ。
You're probably wondering what I've done with them.
脳だけ保存とか、面倒だから100人ひとまとめにした肉塊とか、そんな手抜きなんぞするものか。
And she preserved their brains. Or maybe she just lumped them all into a ball of flesh. As if I'd do
き
that.
ちんとカフェを用意して、食事も娯楽も睡眠も自由に提供してるんだぞ。中には一生ここで暮らしたいなんて騒ぎ立てるバカもいるぐらいだ。
I built them a cafe and provided plenty of food, entertainment, sleep, and freedom. Some of them even said they wanted to live like that forever. Touko's words were hardly believable, but it was clear her crests weren't copies. Alice's scowl deepened. What Touko had described had no discernible benefit in her mind. Why had she gone to the trouble of stealing other mages' crests? It would have been more efficient to break down the crests on a component and make replicas. For a skilled puppet maker like Touko, she could have even made a much more powerful puppet with those. Would have made a pawn loyal to her every command at that. Much more useful than any enslaved mage.
なんでそんなことを。
Why, Touko?
そういう人なのよ、姉貴は。これで行くと決めたらそれしか目に入らない人なの。家庭より結果の人なの。
That's Touko for you. When she decides to do something, that's it. Everything's a means to an end.
ある日の話よ。テレビでピザの CM をやっててさ。私たちは唐突にあのデブ食を食べたくなった。
Listen to this. One time we were watching TV and a pizza commercial came on. We both really wanted to eat something
で
greasy.
も悲しいかな。一般家庭であるうちにあったのはサラミだけ。
Unfortunately, our super boring family only had the pepperoni.
うちの実家、山奥にあるの知ってるでしょ？
You know my house is on top of a big hill,
町
right?
まで行くのに1時間はかかる。中学1年だった私は我慢できなくて町まで行ったけど、ピザ屋なんか一軒もなくてとぼとぼ帰ったの。
Getting into the city took about an hour, but I just had to have that pizza, so I walked it. Could I find a pizza place? No, so I walked home empty-handed. It was the tragedy of living in the countryside. Misaki, which had only recently gotten a conveyor-belt sushi restaurant, would not see a pizzeria for another 2 years.
なのに、
Then, when I got home, hungry and tired,
骨折り損で家に帰ったら、姉貴のやつ、 おかえりとか手を振ってピザ食べてやがったのよ。
My damn sister waved at me all welcome back with a big slice of pizza hanging out of her stupid face.
おせんべいを下地にしてみたわとか言って。
She was like, I tried using rice crackers as a base.
外見たら鳥3羽と牛1頭丸々消えてて、ああこの女には10日交換とか手間とかお金の問題とかそういうの一切頭にないんだって思い知らされたわ。
When I looked outside, 3 chickens and a cow were gone. That's when I realized she had no concept for the value of money, hard work, or fairness. Alice agreed. That was pretty crazy.
そんな無茶なやつだからガンド打ちで目に見える傷跡を出そうなんて平気で考えるのよね。
Stupid crap like that means I'm perfectly fine with putting a hole through her chest with a Gonder shot.
あんなのゲマトリア一節分の栄唱で同じ効果を出せるのに、あくまで呪術にこだわるから空も飛べない人形になるのよ、バカ兄貴。
I mean, she could have just chanted a single verse from the Gematria to get the same effect, but no. She was so obsessed with curses, she made a puppet that couldn't even fly. Thought of the puppet doppelganger made her blood boil. It was clear to Aoko now that Touko had done it on purpose to annoy her. Touko furrowed her eyebrows at Aoko's verbal assault. She had been stoic up until now, but speaking rudely about her prized puppet was crossing the line.
その人形に追い詰められたのはお前だったね。
If I recall, that puppet had you on the
そ
ropes.
れとゲマトリアはカバラの秘術だ。私はルーン専門だからお前のように広く浅く知識を広める気はないよ。
And for your information, Gematria numerology is a Kabbalist secret. I'm a rune specialist, so I don't need to learn anything and everything like you do.
まあもっとも
Well, I did learn something.
この刻印の所有者の一人からケルトの結界を教わりはしたがね。
One owner of these crests taught me about Celtic bountic fields. Touko looked into the crest over her left shoulder. Its shine was ever radiant, proving that its magecraft was active.
これは城で祖父を封じ込めるのに使っていてね。
I used this castle to seal away grandfather.
犯人汎用のドロイド層を閉じ込めたとまではいかないが、そうだな。私では郵便ポストぐらいの大きさが限界か。
I trapped that half yokai druid monk in a tower. Well, I say tower, but it's closer to a mailbox in size.
ほら、昔お前が壊した赤いポスト。ちょうどあれぐらいの可愛い鳥小屋だよ。
Like that red mailbox you broke, remember? About that big. But it's a cute little birdcage.
人間一人分をしまうには窮屈だろうが、祖父は肉体というより霊体に近い。見ようによってはそっちの方がふさわしいかもしれないね。
Cramped for one person, but grandfather's more spirit than body, so I guess it's more appropriate for him anyway. Touko stifled a sinister laugh, her explanation chilling. Her cold veneer seemed to slip slightly when he came to her grandfather. Her smile betraying the long festering hatred she still clung to.
そういったわけでね。さっきの青子の魔術を防いだので、この刻印もしばらくは使用不能なんだ。
Anyway, because I blocked your attack, I can't use this crest for a while.
今のが本当の魔法だったなら、わずか3行の刻印では打ち消せなかっただろうに。青子、お前は僅差で負けたんだ。恥じることはないよ。
Oh, if you'd used true magic, the 3-line crest wouldn't have countered it. You only lost by a slight margin, Aoko. You should be proud.
じゃあ、そろそろ終わりにしよう。
Alright then, let's wrap this up.
抵抗をするのは自由だが、ベオ相手にそれは辛いぞ。
Feel free to fight back, but remember, you're against Beo. Touko snapped her fingers one more time. The golden werewolf was hiding in the old school building. The signal to him echoed eerily through the surrounding woods. Before the echo stopped, Aoko shouted back at Alice. Alice, go! The order sounded like a reprimand, but Alice silently obeyed. Without hesitation, she left Aoko behind to handle Touko and made for the forest. If defeat was inevitable, it would be pointless for both of them to die. If one of them could survive, there could be a round 3. That was why Aoko decided to be the sacrificial pawn.
トウコ自身の切り札も分かったし、アリスが本調子になれば勝てない相手じゃないものね。
Though we know what Touko's trump card is, if Alice can get back to normal, she'll stand a chance. Aoko muttered bitterly to herself as Alice's feet crunched through the snow. Instead of cursing her own death, she cursed the fact that she would not see Alice defeat Touko. For what else was there to curse except this? Alice disappeared into the forest. Feeling her Bella Mage's presence fade, Aoko continued to glare at her sister.
いつまでじらす気？私、待たされるのは好きじゃないんだけど。
How long did you plan to drag this out? You know I hate it when people make me wait. Speaking of waiting, the werewolf Touko had called was nowhere to be seen. Should have taken him more than a few seconds to come flying out of the old school building.
そうせくな。今赤ずきんを追っているところだ。
What's the big hurry? He's after Little Red Riding Hood for the time being.
黒帽子の彼女をそう例えるのはやや無理があるがね。
Or rather, Little Black Hat. Divorce the metaphor. Her tone reeked of irony. The words traveled aimlessly across the schoolyard like a rambling announcement. Aoko stood... Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, by the way. Aoko stood frozen and dumbfounded. Everything Touko was saying seemed so far away from reality. Alice! Aoko was done with being fooled, so she turned around. The moonlight shining off the fallen snow allowed her to see far into the forest. Through the white darkness, a lone boy came to view, walking towards her. He couldn't have been any taller than Aoko's chest, but he carried Alice over his shoulders with ease. As if she was nothing, he tossed her body upward. She arced through the air for several feet before dropping headfirst before Aoko's eyes. Her neck would snap on impact. Even though she was wiser not to, Aoko reached out and caught her. Alice's light body weighed heavy as she fell into Aoko's arms. The stitches on her wounds tore. Dying, Aoko's arms crimson. Aoko gritted her teeth, fighting the pain that shot through her body and the sensation of the warm blood. Alice, are you still? Alice did not respond, but Aoko could see that she was at least conscious. The werewolf must have ambushed her right after she ran into the woods. Alice bled heavily from where the wolf tore her abdomen open last night, just like he had done to Aoko.
初めから森に潜ませていたとはね。
You were in the woods the entire time. Cursing her own carelessness, she gently lay Alice's body down. She set her sights on the blonde-haired boy and her new target.
つまり、あれよね。
So that's how it is, huh?
甘く見ていたふりで、初めから余裕なかったんだ。
A wolf in little kid's clothing? Even to the face of Aoko's rage, he did not stop smirking. He stared back at the girl's eyes, gleaming, twinkling with excitement at the brutality to come. The blonde hair and green eyes she saw last night. And his effeminate features now seemed ethereal, like he had changed into a being from another planet.
ベオ、今日は食っていいぞ。
You'll feast tonight, Beo. Touko's voice echoed from afar. The boy's grin broadened. Nobody could have expected what came next. Aoko rushed headfirst at the boy. Faster than the robin decoy, she sped, blood dripping from both arms. Touko watched wide-eyed at the spectacle. Alice could only look with vacant eyes as she lay helplessly on the ground. The werewolf boy was caught off guard by the prey becoming predator. Aoko crossed a 20-foot gap in a second before planting a foot in the snow. It arrested her momentum and pivoted her body like a top. Even if he instantly understood what was coming, the boy couldn't be able to dodge in time. The neck! Using the momentum from her sprint, she pushed her leg to the ground and sprang up. With deadly timing, her roundhouse kick swung in a wide arc towards the boy's neck, sending an explosion of force to his brainstem. That's about what I expected. It was an expert display of martial arts, strengthened by magical energy. And hot pants. She'd gotten the hang of close combat while fighting Touko's puppets. The violent kick was powerful enough to shatter a tree trunk. The boy did not move. Aoko's right shin connected firmly and stopped. Shockwave rippled through his neck. It was the same feedback Al had felt when she destroyed the puppet. Even if he wasn't defeated, she could have severely damaged his spine. She had to have severely damaged his spine. As she looked at him to confirm her kill, the boy simply stared back at her, not even bothering to twitch an eyebrow.
お姉さんの右足は確か噛み切った方だ。
That must be the leg I bit.
それで首を狙ったのはすごいよね。女の人は本能的に自分の体をかばうものだってトウコさんは言ってたのに。
Can't believe you went for my neck like that. I mean, wow. Miss Touko said that girls instinctively try to spare their own bodies.
けど残念。せっかくの勇気も無駄でした。僕の体毛の質はこの姿でも変わらない。
It was a valiant move.
だけでもお姉さんの蹴りを受け止めることはできる。
It was a valiant move, but you wasted it. My hair is as strong as when I'm a wolf. Even my peach fuzz can stop your kick. The only one hurt between the two was Aoko. The leg she had lodged into his neck was totally numb, like it had been chopped clean off with a hatchet.
それに少しだけ迷いがあったな。くっつけたばっかりの足だからかばったでしょ。
You held back a bit too, right? You wanted to protect your leg, I guess.
人間が僕の相手をするならそんなこと気にしちゃいけないのに。
Humans need to forget that kind of thing when fighting me.
ああ、でも。
Still. The boy smiled, basking in Aoko's shock and awe. She could not free her leg. No doubt as soon as she regained her footing, he would tear her stomach open.
どっちにしろミンチだから気にしても仕方がないよね。
Well, you're mincemeat anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter.
ほら、もったいない。せっかく治ったばかりなのに。
See? What a waste. And it just healed up, too. Aoko wasn't sure, but it felt like he had sunk his finger into the flesh of her right leg. He was right about her leg. She barely had any feeling in it. It had been completely paralyzed after the last attack, and was now back in the same horrid state. Except this time, instead of being torn to pieces, it was crushed to the bone. Her leg might have been numb, but just the look of it was enough to horrify her. The way it was crumpled. All that blood. Any normal person would have died from shock. As if thinking about someone else, Aoko considered how cruel magic crests could be.
あれ？まだ目が死んでない。
Huh? Still some life in your eyes.
あんまり苦しめたくないんだけど。頑丈なのも考えものだよ。
I don't really want to torture
お姉
you.
さん。
I don't really want to torture you. You should drop the top act. The boy thrust his hand out at Aoko's chest. Her consciousness flickered from the sudden pain of a stake. No, a child's fist piercing her torso. Scenery flew by. She soared through the air like a rag doll, tossed away by a bored child. Just like Alice a moment ago, she tumbled through the air and hit the ground, hard. Her right leg was crushed. Her chest caved in. It was as if her heart had been scooped out of her chest. Each gasp of breath left her wanting more. Is this what it was like to see stars? The terrifying part was the pain. It never let up. Desperately trying to suck in oxygen, she could still feel his fist. Leisurely, the boy strolled across the snow towards Aoko's broken body, his red tongue gliding over his lips. He stared at his prey, who was desperately trying to breathe, his eyes filled with glee. Aoko bit down at the temptation to drift away, even though she could find no reason to fight on. The snow had broken her fall slightly, but her death was all but certain. The fist-sized crater in her chest and her mangled leg made sure of that. Even though she knew she was a broken mess, her magic crests frantically worked to resuscitate her heart. But why? The sight of Touko in the distance was the only thing that kept her conscious. Her sister looked surprised for some reason, like she was witnessing some strange phenomenon. That wasn't like her. Wondering what it was, Aoko tried to stay conscious. What's happening? Feebly trying to raise her head, she looked to where Touko was staring. Why did she look like that when she was so close to victory? Trying to make a decision here. What time is it right now? Yeah, let's keep going. His heart was beating faster than normal. The fragmented and disturbing images kept returning, and he desperately pushed them into the back of his mind. They were thoughts that shook his resolve. He did his best to file them away into an unseen corner of his consciousness. Right now, he could only focus on controlling his breathing and his exertion. Just stay calm, he repeated to himself. He had not stopped for a second since leaving the church, even without giving a thought to what he would do next. So many traffic lights. So many people. It was Christmas. There's no way he would find a taxi. Waiting for one was not an option. It was why he had put his trust in his legs. He dashed through the city streets. He had to find a shorter route than last night. His heart was ready to jump out of his chest, pounding like a hammer against a firebell. He had no intention of giving up yet, but he couldn't seem to calm himself down. In his precarious condition, even surrender seemed too great of an effort to spare. Visions of horrible outcomes flashed through his mind. No, calm. He needed to stay calm. That was his only weapon. He was painfully aware he was powerless. The best thing he could do was keep his head on straight. While he was wrangled with his mind, his pulse seemed to quicken with every step. The forest was faintly lit by the moon. There was more than enough on such a bare mountain. He followed the two sets of footprints. Ahead lay a situation he had nothing to do with, just like at the amusement park. Even if you go, there's nothing you can do for them. Even if he got the delegate for them, the only effect her admonishing words had were to hasten his pace. He pushed the ground with his legs even harder, trying to leave his doubt as he kicked up the snow behind him. Of course he was powerless. The pain of his chest told him so. At best he would be useless, and at worst he would be a liability. He recalled the binding spell placed on him at the church. It didn't matter. His body told him he would regret being torn to pieces less than if he did nothing. Not once did his legs fail him as he ran through the woods, though it felt as though his heart could at any moment. His weakness screamed at him from within, just like back at the amusement park. He was beyond reason or circumstances now. Ultimately, I just want to help her. That was all he really desired. His heart pounded with vigor. As he ran through the dark, wintry forest, only one thing gnawed at his mind. Not concern for the girls, nor anger toward Touko. The red roses bursting forth from her limbs. Screams of agony, like childbirth. The harsh reality of something beautiful dying. The nightmare was tenacious. Never again. Never again did he want to see something like that again, if he could help it. Just ahead was the forest clearing. The moonlight shone on the old school building like a spotlight. Once again, those thoughts crept back. He can bear seeing something like that again. That was why he ran. But if he had to face it a second time, how could he stay calm? With that thought in mind, he arrived at the clearing. Somehow his frantic breathing, his writhing, lowering shoulders stopped. No exhaustion, no inertia. Just blankness. Like his mind was frozen in time. This was the second time he felt like this. The nausea and dizziness of the first time. The pathetic whining of the last few weeks. The doubts clouding his mind. They were all gone. Displaced entirely from his mind by an even stronger emotion. His heart pounded with the force of a sledgehammer. It was a primal sound, loud enough to bring him to his senses. Soujyuro stepped into the clearing, letting out a deep, steady exhale. Although his eyes were locked with the blonde-haired boys, his concentration was focused inward. Be calm. Be calm. Every fiber of his being worked to control his breathing. The clearing told the story of Aoko and Alice's crushing defeat. Aoko was lying face up in the snow, her right leg bright red and crushed at the thigh. Her eyes were glazed over, but Soujyuro could tell she was still bravely fighting. Judging by her spluttering, she had taken a hard blow to her chest or back. Soujyuro deduced it was most likely both. Alice's injury seemed less serious than Aoko's, but she still lay motionless on the ground nevertheless. She was lying across from Aoko, face down in the snow, arms out in front, as though pushing herself up was too pitiful. Before the old school building stood the figure of the mage he had seen before. Paying her no mind, Soujyuro began to walk forward. Feeling calmer since arriving at the clearing, he advanced towards Aoko. Touko did nothing to stop him. No one noticed. The faintest look of worry flickered in her eyes. Are you a friend of theirs, mister? The child werewolf spoke amicably, confident in his victory, and perhaps also eyeing up a new meal. Soujyuro ignored him and kept walking towards Aoko. The complete disregard wiped the smile from the boy's face. Still, Soujyuro carried on. Beast's feelings were the last thing on his mind. Once he reached Aoko, he looked down at her with a pained expression on his face. Strangely, he was at a loss for words. After a slight hesitation, all he could manage to say was, "That wasn't very polite, Mrs. President. He shouldn't have left the church without saying goodbye." His awkward remark was half scolding and half affectionate. "You idiot." Despite the pain in her stomach, Aoko was able to throw an insult his way. "Glad to see you still have some fight in Yaozaki." His voice brightened, as if buying her bravado. The truth was she barely had the strength to live. Despite that, Soujyuro looked like he wanted to respond in his usual way. Something like, "See, Yaozaki, you're too tough to die, even when someone kills you." "You know." As soon as she tried to speak, she ran out of breath. Soujyuro heard her loud and clear this time. He might have looked absent-minded, but he knew exactly how dangerous the situation was. Aoko knew because his carefree-sounding words did not match his expressionless face. "What do you think you're..." Before she could say doing, she coughed painfully. Soujyuro pressed his finger to his lips and nodded. Aoko couldn't quite believe it, but it looked as though Soujyuro had gestured for her not to speak. "Isn't it obvious? It's the same as last time." "If you go down, I step in, right? So I'm here." "Okay, I still can't do anything, but still." Aoko didn't know what to say. She could only look at him, amazed and awed. The werewolf stared at them, visibly frustrated. After all, he believed himself to be the noblest of all creatures. Ignoring him was treason, punishable by death. Had Touko not been there, he would have sunk his teeth into Soujyuro's neck by now. He was sure he'd been intimidating enough. However, his prey didn't show any signs of fear. It was hard to imagine, but maybe, just maybe, this guy didn't view him as a threat.
まあ誰でもいいんだけど、筋張った肉は歯ごたえがあっていいし、何より食い出がある。
Whatever, as long as the meat is tender, juicy, and filling. I don't care whose it is.
先にそのお兄さんから始めても構わないよね。
Hey you, big bro. You don't mind if I start with you, do you? Boy Wolf called out once again. Still not responding, Soujyuro raised his hand to his nose. Cool, calm, and collected. Paying no mind to the boy, yet keeping an eye on him. Something reeks. Everyone present was a little confused. No one really seemed to be able to smell anything but him.
へえ、何が匂うっていうのかな、お兄さん。
Oh? What you smell, mister? Beo's voice retained his usual arrogance, but was tinged with impatience. The boy was unable to hide his irritation at being ignored. Finally, Soujyuro turned to face the boy, just a short distance from him. It's like rotten meat. This is why I hate dogs. His voice is filled with disgust and contempt. Soujyuro was mainly speaking to himself, but the werewolf boy had never felt so insulted. Even if that was not Sojuro's intent at all. In a moment, the wind picked up, perhaps signaling a change in the werewolf's mood. A fiery gale whipped around, carving patterns in the snow. Soujyuro! Sensing he was about to be killed, Aoko desperately tried to move, but her broken body would not respond. After hearing Sojuro's insult, Alice was unsuccessfully struggling to get to her feet too. In complete contrast, Soujyuro stood there, farming aura, firmly and unfazed. The little blonde boy's well of patience had run dry. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I get it. You're underestimating me because I look like a kid, huh? Big mistake! This time playing human was over. Enraged, the boy transformed. He grew larger and larger, golden fur spouting from his pale flesh. His mouth grew razor-sharp fangs. His hands grew claws. Drawing from the magical energy in the air, he transformed into a preternatural beast. A wolf in the shape of a human. Beo, did I say you could transform? Touko yelled at him, but the werewolf did not respond. He only huffed deep breaths of hot air. Did you really just... That was all Soujyuro could say in response to the boy's metamorphosis. Such a transformation was the stuff of nightmares. What was worse, the beast, now towered above him. It was enough to make anyone question reality itself. Amazing. Seeing his prey reaction satisfy the werewolf, and his mouth twisted into a satisfied grin. He was a strange one, this guy. But meat was meat. However, the beast's arrogance was short-lived. The prey breathed a sigh of exasperation before speaking. You really are a dog. You could hear a pin drop, even in the snow. Aoko, Alice, and Touko were all dumbfounded. Were they really seeing a human, not just stare a werewolf down, but insult it to its face? They just couldn't believe it. It was too late. Any trace of the wolf's pride or dignity faded away. The onlookers finally realized that the wolf was serious. Beo, do not kill him! But Touko's command fell on deaf ears. The wolf prepared to lunge, his emerald eyes fixed on Soujyuro, not 30 feet in front of him. A mere 30 feet. A half second was all he needed. Another half second to bring his claw down and slice his prey from head to toe. You're dead! A roar of joyous, unbridled fury, far and wide. It was the only warning the werewolf gave before he exploded towards Soujyuro. 1 second. A golden blur swept forth as a furious gust too fast for eyes to follow. In the face of unworldly speed, there was only one thing to do. Soujyuro stepped forward, a silent shadow opposite the beastly silhouette of the incoming werewolf. He needed exactly 3 paces. He bet his entire life on around 3 feet of distance. In the blink of an eye, death would be upon him. Yet he did not show the slightest indication he intended to avoid the lunging behemoth. The wolf's forelegs slammed into the ground with earth-shaking fury. His back muscles tensed up so much it seemed barely contained his frame, and he swept his paw downward. Soujyuro's small step neatly evaded the claws, but he had a different motive. He was merely positioning himself for the next move. His intention was never to avoid anything. From the beginning, his mind was focused on one thing. One point to aim for. One mind. One breath. He picked the perfect opening in the wolf's torso, the precise microsecond between contraction and relaxation. That one point alone was the crack in the dam of life. He punched the werewolf in its chest with his feeble human strength. Fuck! There was a dull thud and a burst of blood. The twisted flesh and gore were all Soujyuro's own. The werewolf's raised claw convulsed. From an insignificant impact, the beast's body was the first to collapse. From then, his spirit. There was a moment of utter incomprehension. The wolf opened his jaws to try and pull air into his lungs. Gasping, he began to topple forward. A slender figure stepped around to his flank. The next blow pierced him like a spear. Ignoring his mangled left arm, the silhouette whirled around and drove his right elbow into the collapsing werewolf back. There was another muffled impact. The second strike penetrated to the exact same spot the first strike had, crushing the beast's heart. This time the blood that flew into the air belonged to the gasping wolf. The werewolf fell to the ground, choking on his own blood. He did not get up. He showed no signs of life. And it was over. There was no remorse, no hesitation in that brief act of violence. Perfect, furious golden beast lay still. Felled in a mere 3 seconds. Yeah, baby. No sane person would have bet on this outcome. His breathing calm, Victor stood over the fallen behemoth's body. What? How? Even as the beast lay crumpled in the snow, he could not grasp what had happened. His heart had ruptured, letting the blood flow to the body and his brain, leaving him helpless. That much he knew. If he were a normal creature, he would be dead. As it was, this was a trifling inconvenience. Once his heart was repaired, his body would heal as well. It was not as if he had been struck by magecraft exceeding his own mystical nature. This was a little different than a grazed knee. Which is why it was so strange. Your heart does not stop from a grazed knee. What did I do wrong? The werewolf had frantically searched his memory. He managed to remember right up until the moment he raised his claws. What had come after that? Given the right transformation, he knew he could withstand even a cannon blast. How had a puny human dropped him? Wait. For that, he had to figure out exactly what his opponent did to him. The moment he got in close, yes, he had felt a small impact. The attack was so accurate, it probably only affected his heart. Ridiculous. Even if that was possible, there's no way that that alone could stop a werewolf's heart. In the end, no matter how much he thought about it, nothing added up. The answer was out of reach for a werewolf with no knowledge of being backed into a corner, let alone the limits of human skill. Only one thing was certain. He had lost. He tried to piece together the sequence of events. The explosion in his chest, the flash of white. After that, as he was falling over, he took another blow to his back. That was the one that disrupted his heart. This can't be. There's no way I could lose. Indeed. It was physically impossible. The boy gnashed his teeth and tensed his body in indignation at his unfair conclusion. Oh, I know. None of this is real. No other werewolf had ever managed to lay a claw on me. This pain's whole situation isn't really happening. It makes no sense. Who on this planet could beat me? Enough thinking. He was ready. From the ground, he glared at his enemy to his side. I don't lose. The very next moment, an unknown type of pain coursed down his spine. It had eyes, cold eyes, staring, piercing, colorless. The moon looked more alive. Its arms were broken. Its inhumanly powerful attack had mangled them beyond recognition. If it was in pain, it would have cried out. But it was silent. Was it ever alive? Those dead eyes. He'd seen eyes like those before. Those eyes without hatred, without joy, without any feeling behind them at all. It was a mindless insect. The werewolf's hair stood on end. What was this creeping chill crawling up his spine? Having never experienced fear, the werewolf didn't know what had become of him. Despite countless clashes against other mystics, it had been a human that broke him. He knew beasts even larger than himself. He knew legendary creatures like himself. He did not know this. He'd never imagined a human-sized bug. The chill down the werewolf's spine was so vicious it threatened to split him in two. If he moved even an inch, it would crush his skull underfoot. In spite of the despair gripping him, the boy paradoxically sensed that his opponent wouldn't move at all. This human would exhibit no further violence. It was a creature. No, a stone that held no animal instincts. It masqueraded as a human. Contradiction grated against his heart, his values. A phantom pain born from an unknown emotion. Fear. It wasn't just grating. It was like many needles slowly digging into his heart. This had been his first taste of doubt, of reality. Such contradictions existed in the world, after all. There were irrationalities and questions he didn't want to hear the answers to. It hurts. The suppressed pain suddenly flowed through his body like a raging river. This was also a first. Until now, he'd always been able to control pain. He had never known what it was like to tremble. An elemental might have even felt sorry for him if it were here to watch. How sad. Born complete, yet lost in the lunacy of the human world. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts so much. His heart had already fully regenerated. Howling in mental agony, the beast clutched his own trembling body. Those eyes, those human eyes, looked straight through him. And then the boy realized the only reason he was still alive. Even with both arms broken, the human could have finished him off with its legs. But it didn't matter. Because his opponent was giving him a taste of his own medicine. It was not revenge for trying to kill him. This was for the revenge This was revenge for the wounds he inflicted on the girls. The absurdity of it all made his throat tighten. His breathing was frantic. The human had no sense of self. It had no concern for its own safety when it stood between him and the girls. That must be why it had no hate or fear, or perhaps even intent to kill him. Indeed, the fact that he was alive had nothing to do with the human's will. The fight was machine-like. So was its judgment. An eye for an eye, and nothing more. If the werewolf had killed one of the girls, this exchange would have ended differently. If I'd killed them, would I have been killed? He shuddered at the thought. He had never entertained such a possibility. He had never had to, because he was supposed to be the one exception to that rule. Agony kicked him hard in the gut. No matter the mystic, nothing was immune from injury, from decay. The boy finally understood an obvious law of the world. Or rather, he had been taught. He would have killed me, I know it. Those eyes, they would not stop staring down at him. Retribution was a universal law. He was now painfully aware of that fact. And yet, the one who brought form to this idea was this human. The pain of defeat, pain in his heart, the pain of comprehending the incomprehensible. Pain, pain, pain. The impossibility of it all shattered his perfect world, ate him, consumed every fiber of his being. The doubt made his head spin. It was too much. Humans were impossible to understand. I'd have been killed. I'd have been killed. I'd have been killed. He had not been made to face the death of another, but his own. Unable to cope, he reverted to his human form. Quietly. He shivered like a frightened child in a mother's lap. Still laying in the snow, Aoko choked on her words. Unable to entirely comprehend what had unfolded.
宗十郎あんた
Soujyuro, you... She couldn't hide the trembling in her
Nani?
voice. What? Speaking in his usual way, Soujyuro nonchalantly turned towards her.
何って今自分が何をしたか分かってんの
What do you mean, what? Do you even know what you just did? She shouted angrily as though he had done something wrong. Soujyuro looked surprised, wondering what on earth he had done to upset her. He lowered his gaze back at the wolf boy. Knitting his brow in dismay, Soujyuro finally realized what Aoko was referring to.
心外だな。青崎は分かってると思ってた。
That's weird, Aozaki. I thought you knew. He looked at her in disappointment.
分かってるって何をよ
Knew? Knew what? What are you talking about? Feeling slightly affronted, Aoko responded curtly. Soujyuro sighed.
山じゃ、熊はそう珍しいものじゃない。
You know, bears are pretty common in these
以
mountains.
前、確かに言ったじゃないか。
Remember me telling you that? Huh? Aoko's jaw dropped, and frankly, mine too. Brother, that's an entirely different thing. Those are not equivalent. It took her a moment to process what she had just said. She recalled some meaningless conversation or other from who knows when.
君、もしかして俺をバカにしているのか？
Are you making fun of me?
まったく。なんで熊を倒すためなんかに修行しなくちゃいけないんだ。
Good grief. Why did they make me train to fight bears of all things? Yeah. Now that she thought about it, he had spoken about that. He'd mentioned being familiar with large beasts. And she couldn't deny that he'd heard him utter some anachronistic nonsense about training against them. Which meant he was used to dealing with animals larger than himself. If he'd lived the sort of life that involved run-ins with wild bears, then a man-wolf might have only been surprising, but not particularly frightening. Aoko hung her head. After all this time, who was it that really made no
参
sense?
ったわあなたの勝ちよ宗十郎
Okay. You win this one, Soujyuro. Why is the moon red? It was hard to tell whether she spoke of an admiration or exasperation. Either way, she slouched in the snow. Aoko spoke quietly enough that only she could hear her words. Why is that moon red? Damn it, don't ignore me. Touko, on the other hand, understood exactly what had transpired. Beo lay fallen, now just a sobbing boy. And another boy stood over him, with two shattered arms. Near fatally wounded, Aoko and Alice still could not stand, but had recovered enough to breathe. As for Touko, she only had a few tricks up her sleeve. Maybe 3 or 4 more runes at best. The magic crests on her back were unusable. She could use the remaining magical energy from the field imprisoning her grandfather. That would be stupid. If she released her grandfather, she would lose ownership of the sacred ground. Failing to defeat Aoko and Alice now would mean starting over from square one. She couldn't afford that. The sibling rivalry had to end. Touko had gambled everything on her surprise attack. Using the fact that she was still in Aozaki to infiltrate Misaki's defenses. For 3 years, she had labored, selling her work to the association. And she'd used 20 years worth of hair to mobilize an army of familiars. It was now or never.
だが私は失敗した。
But I failed. She'd overestimated the werewolf's power. It should have been enough. Against mages alone, Beowulf by himself would have been enough to ensure complete victory. Things didn't always go according to plan. Beo's incredible strength was conditional. She knew he was not infallible, so why hadn't she prepared a contingency plan? Her heart as cold as ice, Touko stared at Soujyuro, who stood tall. His arms were a hideous mess. The arm he used to strike Beo head-on barely even resembled one. His bones were bent out of shape, his muscles torn to shreds. To say his arm was simply broken would be a gross understatement. Streams of crimson ran down his other arm into the white snow. The elbow he drove into Beo's back was likely shattered, and his muscle and tendons torn up to his shoulder. Judging from the state of his arms, it was doubtful he would be able to use them again. Worse than his arms were his left leg, and no doubt his internal organs too. He'd used the leg to take the full brunt of Beo's charge. At a glance, he looked fine, but it was now just a useless hunk of meat attached to his torso. His insides were worse. Supporting the weight of Beo had ruptured his spine, causing widespread internal bleeding. Basically, he was a dead man standing. A bird with clipped wings. Living like that would not be living at all. He could barely stand, let alone fight again. In contrast, the collapsed werewolf was unscathed. Only once had he coughed up blood. The majority of the pool of red and snow was actually Soujyuro's. A crimson tapestry telling the story of the boy who stood strong and defeated a werewolf.
当然だ。衝撃には反動が伴う。
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
拳を振るうのなら相応の負担がある。まして相手は人狼。
You strike, and you face the consequences. Especially if you hit a werewolf.
走ってくる鉄の壁を真っ向から殴るようなものだ。
It'd be like punching a moving freight train.
それを。
Did he? Perhaps he had known what would happen. Animals instinctively limit their strength in order to protect their body. Compensating for physical weakness with intellect and techniques was humanity's forte, and that clash had shown humans at their very best. And yet, it had also been beyond human. He had attacked without concern for his own safety. Without self-preservation in mind, he could go beyond human capability, enough to strike through the steel-like fur of a legendary werewolf. But who would have thought a beast able to withstand a shot from a tank would have been felled by a mere human?
いや、違う。
No, that's not
ため
right.
らうことなく殴りつけたから壊れたのではない。
The boy didn't break because he struck without hesitation.
初めからあれは壊すことを前提にしていたな。
He struck, knowing he was going to break. He sacrificed his entire body to destroy Beo's heart. Touko felt a chill come over her as she went over in her head what had transpired. It should have been a nightmarish scene. She was captivated by that supreme display of physical rationality. Oop, shit, what was that? I don't know what half these buttons do. From the outside looking in, she had witnessed not an accident, but a rational consequence. In that instant, the boy had put his entire being into piercing Beo's chest. As soon as he laid eyes on Aoko and Alice, he had committed himself fully to the task. He sized Beo up, synchronized his breathing, found his weak point, and calculated the exact position, timing, and distance he would need to hold his ground. He knew he had to do what he had to do to win, and did it with everything he had. It had nothing to do with instinct. A wild creature would not have tried to beat something it could not. Only a human would risk his life when faced with the impossible. That contradiction fed his attack. He twisted his body from his heel to his neck to focus his energy. If Beo had simply tried to run Soujyuro down, the werewolf would probably have won. But the beast wanted to rip him to shreds. Or rather, he was baited into doing so. After Beo charged, when he planted his feet, he raised his claw and swung it downward, putting himself off balance. His pulse was erratic, his movement wild. In that moment, he was vulnerable. That was when Soujyuro made his move. The beast had overwhelming power, but it was sloppy. Whereas the human concentrated all of his meager power into a single point. That was how the human shifted the balance in his favor. The follow-up elbow attack would rupture Beo's heart. Oh shit, what the fuck was that? Ow. Happens sometimes. Deal with that later. It was a graceless second strike. A sloppy blow, no different from Beo's. The elbow was only able to penetrate the beast's golden fur because of the first attack to his chest.
あの時点でベオは丸裸にされていた。
It left Beo wide open.
無敵の人狼がその機能の一切を休止させられた。
Took away his invincibility for a split second.
つまり
Basically. The strike was not meant to break, but to disable. All living creatures had weaknesses. No matter how strong the creature, it had weak points and weak moments. Not just physically, but mentally too. A time when they aren't in their best shape, unable to focus or find motivation. Sickness or lack of sleep or food, for example, cause the body's rhythm to go out of sync without it. For a variety of reasons, intelligent beings risked losing their ability to function properly. Legendary beasts were no exception.
弱点、欠点をつく魔術なら知っているが、すべてを投げ打って弱点を生むとはな。
Weaknesses. I know some magecraft that targets weaknesses, but I've never heard of a technique that risks everything to create one. The boy's strike to the heart was not an attempt to kill Beo. It was designed to create a weakness in something that had none. The elbow attack took advantage of that break in Beo's invulnerability.
加えて、笑えることに不意打ちですらない。
Laughably, it wasn't even a surprise attack.
ベオの神経の伝達速度なら、毒が当たった瞬間に感知し対応できる。
With Beo's reflexes, he should have been able to react.
だが、そもそもそれを毒と認識できなければ、変形のしようもない。
But he didn't even realize he was being attacked.
毒ではないものが毒になるなんて落とし穴を、誰が教えてやれるものか。
How do you teach that even something non-threatening can be a threat? She was frustrated, to say the least. The boy was totally committed, utterly selfless. He bet his life on that single moment without expecting a single thing in return. That boy had acquired the experience and skill to do such a thing. It was not a miracle of luck, nor a miracle of passion. It was not talent, tenacity, or hatred. Without constant, intense training, no one can destroy their body on a whim like that.
子供には相手が悪かったようね。
He made a poor opponent for the child. Seeing Beo cowering in the snow, Touko was disappointed in her own lack of foresight. She had used him for his talent alone, ignoring his inexperience. If Beo was not a child, his life experience might have given him the strength to bounce back and devour Soujyuro after regenerating.
ベオを責めるべきか、それとも君を評価すべきなのか。
Should I scold you, Beo? I praise you. Touko quietly lifted her hand. Nobody noticed. Standing far away, the boy standing there looked like a hunter from a picture book. He had a slender build, but that was likely because he intentionally shed any excess. Given what she had just witnessed, his closeness had to be part of an act. The act of a hunter. As she thought to herself, she suddenly remembered. The first thing that crossed her mind the first time they spoke.
そうだったな。
I remember
だ
now.
が、それは忘れていたかったよ、宗十郎君。
And how I so wanted to forget. Dear Soujyuro. No sooner had she felt a slither of sentiment, she returned to her unshakable resolve. She was raised near the Ozaki household, taught never to question the morality of her actions. That was why, even now, she knew exactly what she had to do. I'd really appreciate it if the answers turned tail and leave. Well, I'm glad that went well, Soujyuro muttered, unmoving, perhaps because of the pain of his broken arms. He did not look at Aoko. Instead, his gaze was focused on Alice, who was lying prone some ways away. Aoko thought he looked lonely.
よかったって何がよ。
That went well? What did? She asked, spurring him on. They were mere steps from each other, close enough to touch hands. Their quiet voices carried in the stillness.
私たちが無事だったからなんて言ったら怒るわよ。
Don't you dare say you're happy we're alive or I'll be so mad. She wasn't joking. Don't stop. Mouse. Turn on. Thank you. Go away. Go away. There we go. Soujyuro turned away from her slightly, shaking his head.
口にするのは3度目だけど、青崎の心配はしていないんだ。
I'll say it a third time, but I'm not worried about your safety,
い
Osaki.
や、さっきはちょっと意識が飛んだようなんだけど。
You know, I swear I blacked out back there just for a moment. He said, and an embarrassed smile crossed his face. First time he outright fainted, but the second time his passion pushed the dizziness and nausea aside. He just calmly did what he could, the best he could. Nevertheless, no matter how calm he tried to be, deep within festered very real rage.
ふん。じゃあ何が良かったのよ、宗十郎。
Okay, Soujyuro. What is it you think went so well? Aoko's voice had a slight tinge of annoyance. Soujyuro responded.
だって、ようやく約束が守れた。そっちだけが約束を守ってるのに、こっちは果たせなかっただろ。
Well, because I was finally able to keep my promise. You held up your end of the deal, but I hadn't delivered yet.
それがずっと気になっていたんだ。その機会があって、本当に良かった。
It always bothered me, so I'm glad I got the chance to set things straight. His relief expressed itself in a small but heartfelt smile. Aoko listened, astonished. For a moment, she couldn't recall what promise Soujyuro was talking about. When she remembered what he was talking about, what she had told him all that time ago in the amusement park, her mind went blank.
あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら 俺のことは見逃してくれる？
If I'd agree to help you kill that thing, will you let me go? He proposed the deal, but at the end he hadn't been of any use. Must have been eating away at him this entire time. Aoko considered the agreement binding, but only for herself.
あんなどうでもいいことを。
You were worried about that? She muttered in disbelief. Soujyuro gave a nod and affirmed. Oh, shit.
だから、
Nope.
約束は自分のために果たすものだって。
あんなどうでもいいことを。
Playing around with my buttons. She muttered in disbelief. Soujyuro gave a nod and affirmed with a tiny voice.
約束は自分のために果たすものだって教えてくれたのは青崎だ。
You're the one who taught me that promises are things you make to yourself, Aozaki.
だから、君が守っている限り、俺も守らないといけない。
So as long as you keep your word, I need to keep mine.
はあ、ずっと俺はそうしたかったんだ。
Whew. What a weight off my shoulders. As if listening to a confessional, Aoko stayed silent. She couldn't find the words to say anywhere. Soujyuro proved every enigma. Taking such a trivial promise so seriously, speaking so earnestly about something so basic. She couldn't wrap her head around how he had beaten a werewolf. But his personality? That was the true mystery. There was no use trying to figure that out now. To Aoko Ozaki, it was a riddle wrapped in an enigma within a conundrum.
それじゃあ、借りは返したから帳尻はゼロだ。
So, paid my dues.
これで貸し借りはなしだぞ、青崎。
Now, we're even, Aozaki. Soujyuro said lightly, perhaps attempting to break the silence. Normally, this would have passed her by, but she saw his kindness for what it was.
貸しがついたのはこっちの方よ。
It's me who owes you one now.
これじゃあどうやって返していいかわからないじゃない。
I don't even know how to begin to pay you back, Aoko grumbled. Soujyuro nodded in happy agreement.
それより、青崎の足、なんか塞がってるな。
Anyway, your leg's looking a lot better.
もしかして、もう立てるのか？
Can you stand? She shot him a stubborn look as if to say, well, duh, obviously. Ever amazed by her grit, he offered her his right hand. Despite being broken at the elbow, Aoko looked as sturdy as ever. By all appearances, it was beyond recovery, and would be for the rest of his life. Even so, he seemed to ignore the pain for Aoko's sake.
ほんと、あんたってバカ。
You really are hopeless. She uttered under her breath, looking up at him. Much as she hated to admit, she could not refuse his hand. Resigning herself, she reached out to Soujyuro. But her hand never reached his. A small bell chimed. A line of wind whipped through the air. It cut through his waist like a guillotine. Fuck! Pieces began to fall. What were those things dropping before her eyes? Aoko couldn't remember who they belonged to.
そ、ジュロ。
Soujyuro? That used to be his name, right? The name of whoever lay in the red snow in front of her? His face now rested on the ground beneath her chin. The smell of viscera assaulted her nostrils. A river of blood flowed from what used to be a stomach. It happened so fast. Too fast for her mind to process, in fact. Her only solace was that he probably did not suffer. How could she think so calmly, especially after what she had just witnessed? Her blood boiled at her own stupidity. Which begged the question, how she should treat the one who did this. She had used all her anger on herself. She had none left to give anyone else. But this hatred was hers, and hers alone. Her problem was this. Could she muster the emotions from this drought of anger? She was not sure. The thought of hunting them down made her smile, unconsciously in anticipation. Aoko turned to the old school building, where Touko was standing there, her arm out in front of her. She'd used the same rune magecraft she used against Aoko and Alice, except Soujyuro had no magic crests. Toko's amber eyes were narrowed, staring intensely at the fallen corpse. As to what she might have been feeling, Aoko couldn't care less. Even if Touko felt regret, Aoko would never forgive her as long as she drew breath.
やはり君からこうしておくべきだったな。
I should have killed you when I had the chance. Touko wasn't speaking to Aoko, but the dead body. There was, of course, no response. No clouds of breath. Coming to terms that he was truly dead, Aoko pushed herself up to her feet.
案外無様ね。
That was surprisingly gruesome for you. Facing her sister in the distance, Aoko spoke hoarsely.
でも正しい選択だわ。これで勝負はやり直しだもの。
But you made the right choice. Now we can finish this. He turned away from Soujyuro, stared at Aoko. It stood far apart. Farther apart than their positions made them seem. Though there was nothing left to say, the two of them exchanged words in respect for the fact that they were once sisters.
魔術刻印という私の切り札はこの通りで、人狼というカードもお前の切り札の前に敗れ去った。
Right. You've seen the aces of my sleeve. My magic crests and the werewolf you trumped.
だが、そちらも刻印を使い切り、彼も今息絶えた。
I've used all my crests up, and your trump card's been ripped to pieces.
互いに決定打はなくなったわけだ。
Stalemate.
そうね。私も甘かった。人狼が再起不能になった時点で、あなたが敗北を認めたなんて勝手に思い上がるんだから。
Looks that way. I suppose I was naive too. I should have known you wouldn't accept defeat after your werewolf failed.
本来ならそうなるんだけど、あなたがそんなに諦めがいいのなら、この町に戻ってきはしないものね。
If you weren't at least this stubborn, you would have never come back to Misaki.
本当に甘かった。
I really was naive. It was clear to Touko that Aoko was trying to suppress her emotions. Aoko was right, though. Her sister had counted on Beowulf to succeed. As mages, no matter what cards Aoko or Alice had in their hands, they were helpless against the werewolf. But then Soujyuro had shown up, and Touko couldn't win as long as he was around. Unfortunately, though he had stopped the werewolf, he had been defenseless against a mage. So she had to kill him. With Soujyuro out of the way, no one could hold Beo back. It would take time for him to recover, but as long as his wounds were only mental, that would be overcome. Alice and Aoko could try to attack again before he recovered, but Alice was being kept in check by the poison, so Touko still had the advantage. Stalemate still. The battle will drag on. Unless Aoko were to use it. Powdery snow began to whirl around. The air around her wailed. It was magecraft that transcended all that was mystical. The gate to miracles beyond human comprehension ready to show itself.
やる気のようね、青子。
You always did love to fight, Aoko. Touko released the crests, maintaining the fields. With that, her grandfather would be freed, and the barriers around Misaki would be restored. Which wasn't what Touko wanted, but it was that, or forfeit her life. The crests at her disposal were now twice as powerful as their sisters. Aoko gazed at this new threat with her eyes half closed. None of this was her concern. Far removed from the situation, she was searching for something hidden deeper inside herself, desperate to reach it. And there it was, an odd feeling, like picking up algae. It was not the fire of emotion. It wasn't solid or great. It must have been what people meant by rising to the occasion. Abandoning thought itself, Aoko held on to that feeling as she stared at her enemy.
いいわよ、トウコ。
All right, Touko. She spoke softly, yet more loudly than a
お
scream.
望み通り、本当の魔法を見せてあげる。
You want true magic? You've got it. Focusing her power to the dim crests on her right arm, she weaved the words together. A single incantation. A final, heartfelt farewell. A brilliant blue-colored magic, taking time back to when a certain someone had been blessed. Put it simply, magecraft is human wisdom. It is the world as we know it. Magic is the singularity that exists beyond either of those. At the beginning, the first changed all. Next, the second recognized many. In answer, the third showed the future. Heathered, the fourth concealed itself. And the final, fifth, had long since lost its significance. Someone once said, had it only ended at the third? Magecraft is the study of history, feats of our making, and life orbiting the planet. A true magic is the providence of a god beyond the heavens. Why do those who stand on the earth extol the virtues of miracles beyond humankind and the planet? This was an undeniable sin. Magic was the enemy of humanity. That is why those who obtain a new magic are killed by the Red Shadow.
聞け、万物の霊長。
Hear me, prime species of all creation. Aoko's voice resonated through and high above the winter skies. The air began to fracture, turning the scenery to broken glass. Touko wondered whether she should fight or flee. She decided to try and keep her feelings in check and see this through. But the object of her obsession for so many years was right in front of her. Rationality was slipping from her grasp. Both of their fates were now uncertain. Touko had an overwhelming advantage when it came to her crests, the terrain. When it came to true magic, however. If the Aozaki magic was anything like Alice Kawanji's fairy tale monsters, then mage strength was not part of the equation. At this point, it was Touko against magic itself, and there was no winning against true. The transcendence and idiosyncrasy of true magic rendered things like magecraft irrelevant.
だが
But can you? Touko stared at her sister, wondering if she actually could use it. Proclamation lacked conviction. She had raised her voice, but it was out of discipline. It had not been the arrogant conviction to sacrifice someone else for her own gain. Having not been chosen to inherit it, Touko could not imagine what the magic in her sister was. Only that it was a force violent enough to change the world. No human mind could withstand the audacity required to make an enemy of the world itself. Especially not someone as indecisive as his sister. The power of magic would surely cripple her. Well? Feeling Touko's eyes on her, Aoko doubted herself. She couldn't help but hesitate. Terror gripped her heart tighter.
でもだからって
I have to. She couldn't run away forever. Her hesitation and terror meant she would never forgive herself for stopping right now. Closing her eyes, she pushed herself to the final stage. Time stopped, like a light being switched off. She submerged herself in her own darkness. Everything froze. Only she moved. Everything around her disappeared as she passed a limitless stream of stars. As soon as she did, she wanted to disappear to the empty thoughtlessness place she arrived in without any answers. Not again. The red shadow will surely come this time. Suddenly, I saw a new memory. Possibly because I used it to make another trade for... I heard a familiar, yet new sound. See anything? Only to fuse with the consciousness that hurtles back in time to zero. His sound. The bitter, sad meaninglessness pulls me by my hair. But I have to resist. The red ghost was always going to be my biggest hurdle. I must forget the value of life. I must forget the dignity of death. The sound persists. It's got nothing to do with this journey. It's just an external distraction. And yet, I think I finally understand. I know what noise has been making me so uneasy. What the... The unsettling whispers were directed at me. Or perhaps the red shadow was perplexed by the quiet soul listening to it. It glares at me, its eyes full of hatred. How could I be so unprepared? Don't tell me. You can't be serious. You're gonna turn me to your prey for that? That is your everything. You have nothing else. The effect of rewinding. The decision to never say never. His prime, his meaningless life. She negated it. She used her superior power to negate that sound which was an absolute rule to him. Just brushed it aside like it was a cobweb. The sound disappeared. A new one replaced it. I wish for nothing. I want nothing. A pure, obedient heart. That's why you get nothing. A life of falsehood, led by affirmation. This is ridiculous. My legs moved towards the future, but they stopped. Change of plans. I'm taking a different path. Nothing's changed. It's just something that's made me real mad. How can I put it? You call this the past, you idiot? If I don't complain about something to someone, I'll explode. Even if it's just the voice, or to he who hears it. Or to the part of me who just stays quiet and watches. Or to the one who did that to him. With no answer, I open my eyes.
告げる
I declare absolutely everything she had dragged up. As for what was there, or what she saw, she couldn't remember. All she held on to was the fury that burned in her heart. Pushed on by something. She didn't know what. She opened the door. The change was extraordinary. Beneath her the snow vanished, replaced by a small patch of lush green grass. The ground had never existed under the frozen blanket. It had been rewritten into a new landscape. The very elements rejected her, as if the electrical discharge lashed at her body. This miracle threatened to destroy the world. The world had to protect itself, and moved to expunge her. Pain scorched her every cell, trying to tear away her consciousness. She did not falter. All this pain and this loneliness was to take her to the root. Ever since inheriting true magic, she suffered this torture time and time again. She contended against the voiceless protest of the cosmos. The burden engulfed her retinas and nerves in flames. And then... light. She finally understood. She remembers why she came back and what she wanted to scream.
青を示す我が名において告げる
By the name Blue, I speak for order. Hear me. A censuring voice told her to stop. At the edges of oblivion, her hand touched the true form of magic. The snarling red shadow was there, telling her it was no use. So much doubt, so much fear. But such things mean nothing to her, to me. I don't care about a magician's obligations or the destruction of mankind. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. I only have one reason for doing anything right now. God, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I just want to save him.
No, say
All is not sane, yet all shall be right. A blue whirlwind whisked up around her. Casting aside her doubt and sorrow, the magician played her trick upon the world. Oh, it's spring now. Time flowed backward. Yeah, I know this. Not in detail, but I know this. Childhood memories were overwritten. White flowers appeared as far as the eye could see. Brighter than snow, they rippled like a wave across the world, devouring it.
Fine. Timeless. Wow.
You're not gonna say it? No, fine. 5 timeless words. Order has fallen to ruin. What was declared had come to be. In this time and this place alone, the 5th magic made itself known. the blink of an eye, the snowy clearing had transformed. A sea of fully bloomed white flowers blanketed the grounds. Only the dilapidated school building and the bare winter trees signified that this was the original world. The once cold wind now blew with a pleasant warmth across the landscape. Even the night sky was once again teeming with stars. If one reached out, one could almost touch them. It was a mix of comfort and solitude, quiet enough to carry the sound of insects flying through the air. A scene far removed from the impurity and grief of humans. A world with nothing, yet one that needed nothing. It was his most precious memory. The winter tundra had changed to a spring meadow. Aoko's so-called true magic confused Touko. Sure, it was pleasing to the eye, but she wanted to see something less idyllic. Aoko's spell was clearly no small feat, but the surrounding mana had not changed. Better to be confused, though, than deal with something like Alice Kwanji's flat snark. The only change seemed to be the flower field and Aoko's appearance. She seemed to have received some enhancement to her physical form, but it would never be enough to match Touko. Okay, so I know this is magic, Touko said with a hint of annoyance. But I'll be honest, this is a letdown. There has to be more, surely. This can't be it. Aoko began walking through the sea of flowers. But she wasn't heading towards Touko. This is it. For me, and for you. Aoko's words sent a wave of unease through Touko. Her sister's voice seemed different somehow. It was mostly the same in pitch, so it had to be the tone. No, that was the same too. Something was off. Could it be? It was then that Touko noticed something else had changed. Not just Aoko in the clearing. The severed body lying at Aoko's feet. It was now whole. Corpse reanimation? Wound healing? Didn't look like Aoko had used a significant formula. Besides, regenerating a body didn't bring it back to life. Since the dawn of time, even true magic had never been able to bring back the dead. The body of the boy behind Aoko was moving, breathing like it was taking a nap. Can the Aozaki magic crest resurrect the dead? No way. This isn't resurrection, it's... Before she could think of an answer, Touko realized what had seemed out of place to her before. Aoko's mannerisms appeared beyond her years. Her appearance had changed ever so slightly. But beyond there had been changed from within. By the time Touko arrived at a seemingly impossible conclusion, Aoko had closed the distance between them. Turbine set. Circuit connected. Aoko raised her left hand to eye level. Touko could see, no, hear the magical energy generating inside Aoko. It was a sound Touko had never heard before. Aoko only possessed a single function, low-grade circuits, no better than any other third-rate mage, so she generated magical energy at a much lower rate than Touko. However, this speed was absurdly quick, moving even faster than the blood pumping through her body. Magecraft could vibrate. How in the hell were the activated Magecraft could vibrate, but how the hell were the activated Fuck, I said it again. Magic circuits audible. Even the association had never heard such a thing. Onward to victory! Spurred to action by the sudden dread she felt, Touko hurriedly carved runes into the air. Touko summoned a divine protection of victory, here to surround herself with a barrier, which was further enhanced by her crests. Paying it no mind, Aoko held her arm steady, now moving it up to strike at her target directly. Let's deploy. Aoko commanded herself succinctly. This was beyond magecraft. In just a few words, she had fired 20 magic bullets. A meteor shower, the bullets smashed through the rocket-proof rune barrier, as well as Touko's spell-woven coat. Shot them without loading? Protective runes lining her coat screamed. They would not be able to take another barrage like that. She had already taken internal injuries. She loathed to admit it, but Aoko vastly outclassed Touko in terms of raw power. Even harder to admit was that her sister probably had not even bought out the big guns yet. Answas, Swallow, Ingwas. Jumping backward, Touko drew more runic symbols in the air. The responser crests burned brightly. But... too slow! With a single word, Aoko nullified the runes, dissolving them before they could be given meaning. The power of Aoko's words had surpassed the magical energy of Touko's rune magecraft. With the runes nullified, Aoko continued advancing through the white flowers. From calmness to the robust spinning of her magic circuits and her breathing, she was different. A woman with sublime self-control, a trait only found in mages with a lifetime of combat experience. You traveled in time. Given the evidence, there was the only explanation for the Aozaki magic. Aoko's magic circuits had not been amplified. That would have been impossible anyway. Like Touko, she would have had to externalize them, which would have just increased the scope of her magical energy and techniques. By nature, the quality of a mage's magic circuits did not change. But Aoko was now clearly a superior mage to Touko. So there was only one logical conclusion. In an instant, she had grown from an amateur into a veteran. She fast-forwarded at her own time. The scarred red mage turned her back on her sister and ran. She knew she couldn't win, so she fled towards the old school building. Aoko did not fire. Not out of pity, but because she deduced an attack at this range was risky. She went to chase after her sister, but stopped suddenly. A few words caught in her throat. She took a small breath.
Alice,
Please, watch him, Alice. She said, slightly embarrassed by the maturity in her voice. White petals flitted through the air. Without looking back, she made after Touko, her long hair flowing behind her. Okay. I think here's where I want to call it. It's a kind of a big one. It'll probably hold on. Mouse. Let's put it there. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Title, please. Yeah, this'll probably take almost all day to upload. Whatever, that's fine. Ooh. There's a part of me that does wish that I had stopped earlier at some point. But I was on a roll. It was still somewhat early in comparison. So interesting. Well, that's that for me, honestly. I could probably sit here talking about stuff, but it is past midnight, so I'd like to go to bed now, if that's all right with everybody here. So, everybody have a lovely rest of your day, rest of your week. Hope you're all taking care of yourselves, and push past limits. I don't know, man. Bye. I'm leaving. Bye.